Hello, everyone, and welcome to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my producer, co-pilot, and best friend in recovery, Dan the Man. Dan, say hello to the lovely people out there.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well.
Thank you so much. It's been great over here on this side of the tracks doing this podcast for y'all. We've had a great response. People are really loving the content, and they're sending in great questions. We have some phenomenal recovery questions for you today. If you're just happening upon our podcast, this is a recovery-based podcast no matter what you got. So I don't care what you're struggling with in this world. The program I Am 1-2, the phrase, stands just for that we welcome everyone because we're all struggling human beings trying to grapple with this damn world we have and all the people that are being made sick by it. And as we know in therapy, sick people create sick people. So it's everywhere. And it seems like it's getting worse by the day. So hopefully this can be a refuge, an island of serenity for you to come in and get some good tools to successfully navigate this world and keep the slime off you. That's a joke I have in my therapy group, that when an addict is really in their cups and they're spewing out their vomit and bile on everyone, it's just like Ray from the Ghostbusters saying, I got slimed. So hopefully this will help you unslime yourself. We're getting ready to head into Memorial Day weekend here in Louisville, and we've gone to our standard 90 degrees, chance of thunderstorms, hot and humid every day. So hope you all have great plans for the holidays. My sister is actually going on a tour of Greece in 3 weeks. Yeah, cool. So what a great thing is that. And I know my friend Dan the Man has his retreat coming up in a few weeks. I want to wait and talk about that a little bit later because it's not this weekend, it's the next weekend. But we'll explain I'll do it in the next podcast. I'll tell you all what a retreat is and why we do it in recovery. Let Dan explain a little bit. So let's get right to it. The way we format this program is we like to do a topic, an edumacation as I call it, and then we'll open it up for a little discussion with me and Dan, his experience. And then we have these fabulous questions. You can write your own questions to us about anything you're struggling with in life. And as long as it's airable, I will definitely read it and address it, and we won't identify you by name. It's completely anonymous. Just send your questions to I Am 1-2 recovery at gmail.com. The word recovery, I Am 1-2 recovery at gmail.com. For those of you who have sent questions in, just take note, we are putting several episodes in the can. So I'm not ignoring your question. I am addressing every single question that crosses our email account. But it may be in a future episode because right now this is episode 5, and then we'll have 4 releasing next week. Is that what it is?
This one will be 7.
A 7. See, we got a lot in the can.
Yeah.
But hang in there because I promise I will address your question. I will not forget you. All right. Well, we're going to talk about a topic today that I wish all of us had been taught in school. I don't know why they don't teach children how to have healthy relationships and what boundaries are. It seems very sad to me in America that about the only boundaries we have is stranger danger for our children and don't touch my stuff. Like I say to my patients, if you left your home today and you hopefully locked your doors so that somebody could not come in and steal your high-def TV, that is a boundary. If you locked your car at the mall and so they wouldn't steal your Christmas gifts, same deal. That is a boundary. But they don't teach us how to set boundaries and have healthy relationships in terms of protecting what is most important to us. And a lot of us don't even know what is most important to us. We're just bouncing through. As we say in the program, we don't have relationships. We take hostages. And it's very hard to even know what you want, how to get it. And that's the difficulty with human relationships. I believe it's the hardest challenge you're going to encounter in this lifetime. Finding that perfect sync, whether it's a friend like me and Dan, whether it's a sponsee, or whether it's a partner for life, between, what you want to need and what I want to need and the way you look at things and the way I look at things and what your programming was and what my programming was. Fitting that together is almost a miracle. And if you have that in your life, thank God every day for it because what do we know? Most marriages fail and it's hard to find that right partner that's going to fit with both people being happy. So we're going to talk about that today, how we can improve and sort of speak our truth. That seems to be a big common problem among addicts and alcoholics is that got beat out of us as a child that it wasn't safe to share our truth. So we started building walls. And as we built that walls, I heard the term today, emotional camouflage. In other words, you can't see me. And then you can't get your needs met if you're not being honest. You're not speaking up. You'll just blow after it. You'll tolerate something you don't like for too long. So First thing I'll always like to start with on boundaries is if you do not have good boundaries, do not beat up on yourself. I encourage all of my patients to look at who taught you. And I mean that very sincerely. When you were growing up, look at the relationship your mother and father had. Look at your aunt and uncle, your grandparents. Look at their lack of boundaries. Look at, did they argue in a healthy way? I get many patients who say, I never saw my parents fight. That is not healthy, actually. If you talk to any family therapist, they'll say children need to learn how to resolve conflict and see how that's done in a healthy way, not just simmer. My grandmother, I'm pretty sure, never expressed an emotion in her life on my father's side, and she would just retire to the kitchen, and we never knew what she was doing in there, but she was depressed. She was clinically depressed because she didn't know how to express herself. Wasn't really allowed even back in the day, and that's really shameful in itself. So again, don't blame yourself. We're all struggling with this, and it is an art. It's something you have to practice over your lifetime. You're just not going to say, oh, I got this. I'll listen to this podcast, and I'm going to be great at boundaries. It's not that easy. Also try to have some fun as you're developing these. You can make mistakes. You can try to do things, see what works and see what doesn't, and learn about yourself. And that's the process, is learning about what works for you. So the first thing I do when I'm talking about boundaries with my patients, I like them to define the word. And when we used to meet in person, I would go over to my whiteboard and I would write the word boundaries on there. And I'd say, what does this mean to you? Give me a definition. Inevitably, they would say things like it's a wall, or it's a line you do not cross, or this is a no-no, but they know it's not a good thing. And I say, that's kind of a sad statement, because all these definitions could fit, and you could find them in the dictionary, but none of them are positive. They all sound like can't, like you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this. I said, how about this one? And then I'll write up on the board in big letters, protection. That is what boundaries are, so that you can protect the things that are most valuable to you in your heart and soul and in your life around you. And as we talk about boundaries today, guys, I am not just talking about relationships. I am talking about your relationship with your cell phone, your relationship with technology, whether or not you protect the thing you love most to do that we talked about last week on the podcast, although that aired a few weeks ago. But those of you that heard the podcast, what do you love most to do in this life? If you're not protecting that, you're taking your cell phone into the same room that you're trying to pursue your passion. That's a lack of a boundary right there. You're basically saying whatever happens on that cell phone when it goes beep, 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 beep is more important than this. And we did not get any classes on that before cell phones showed up, right? It was just, here's your gadget, run with it. Nobody ever taught us like, oh, this is dangerous. I need to have this thing. I keep mine on silent all the time. I do not want to hear a bell, chime, a whistle, or nothing. So we're going to have a whole episode about cell phone addiction and about how we're being controlled by the tech companies. But we'll get to that in another day. But just think outside the box on boundaries. Protecting the things I love, protecting what's most important to me. And please, most of all, if I don't say it enough in this podcast, teach your children this. If your child is 8, 7, whatever, and is expressing an interest in an area of study, something they're passionate about, they love to play the piano or they love to study about science, teach them, okay, honey, you need to nourish this, because you could turn this into a career where you make millions of dollars if you will dedicate to it and honor it and treat it as sacred. How do you do that? Take the cell phone, take the tablet, and focus. When I'm writing, the world does not touch me. Nothing touches me. There could be an earthquake. I don't care. My mother could be calling me, there's a tornado warning. Thank God Mom does that. Because I'm oblivious. I'm not answering the phone. It's in the other room. I'm doing my art. So I hope you can develop that for yourself. That's really the true way to happiness in this life. So another thing about boundaries when you're starting out is it's not just hard and fast, cut and dried. It is a spectrum. A spectrum meaning that on one side you've got the hard ass who's a dictator and or narcissist. In other words, no other person's feelings in the world matter to them, and they're just going to order everybody to do what I think is right and what I want. Do not become that person. That's AKA an asshole. You do not want to be that person. So that's one side of the spectrum. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have the codependent, the person who cannot speak their truth, and or AKA the doormat. I'll have a lot of my patients come in and say, I'm a doormat, everybody walks on me. But with further investigation and sometimes going to Al-Anon, they find out they're a willing doormat and they're getting something out of it. They ain't so victim as they thought. That's another topic we'll have with codependency on a separate day, although I'll touch on it today a little bit. So we don't want to go from someone who's telling everybody else what to do in the world, nor do we want to go not speaking my truths. If you don't speak your truths long enough, you will blow. And that's the tactic most of us have, and I have an example for you. Next thing I'll do with my patients is I'll talk about, imagine you're in the military, and you're in charge of guarding the base while everybody else is sleeping and getting some chow and taking a shower. And the only reason they can relax their guard is because we've got you in the guard tower and you're surveying the landscape to make sure nothing comes to the green zone, which is their term for base, okay? So I say, imagine one night you're on guard duty and you look over the horizon and you see a shadowy figure coming at you. And you can't tell for certain because of the dark but in the moonlight, but it looks like a person. And it looks like they're coming right at your base. What are you going to do? And I tell my patients, what are you going to do, man? Everybody's sleeping. They're going to be killed. What are you going to do? You got to do something. And they shout out, shoot him. That comes out so fast, at least one or two people will throw their out, shoot him, kill him. And I go, okay, that's one thing you could do to set a boundary. But before we get to that, what if this person making its way back to camp is your captain and he got his head hit on a military exercise that day and he's semi-conscious and he's just waddling back to base and you just killed your superior officer? Will there be consequences? Yes, there will. What if it's a camel jockey, to use the terms my soldiers used in group, bringing his camels out for a midnight stroll and you killed a civilian and now it's an international incident? So what would be a better tactic first before you take action? Like I said, most people are 0 to 60 and they wait too long. And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, how about letting them know you're there? Why don't you speak up, turn on a light and say, hey, you are entering a protected zone, a live fire area. Do not come closer. That is standard military protocol, and it should be standard protocol for all of us to have learned in school. You're getting too close to my boundaries. I'm giving you a first warning. Okay? We're cool. You're cool. I'm cool. But give me a little space. Y'all know those people that talk to you like this? They're right up on top of you and they get in and you can smell what they had for lunch? I can't stand those people. I'm like, look, dude, give me a little bit of space. I can hear you just fine. Just let me breathe my own oxygen. But a good sign whether or not you have good boundaries or not is, or do you do this? You lean back or you turn to the side so you don't smell their breath. But you never say, dude, you're too close. So that's the first thing. Communication. I've got to let them know that I'm there and they're about to get lit up with fire. Now the shadowy figure keeps coming at the camp. I said, my patients, what do you do now? And they go, shoot him. And I'm like, wait. I'm not lying. This is what they do. And I was like, I know you want to shoot him. We'll get to that. But what would be the next proper thing to do? I don't know. How about a warning shot? Yeah, that's a good idea. I said, what's that going to do? I don't know. It's going to let them know you're serious. Most human beings will test your boundaries. I don't know why. It's sort of a thing about human nature. They want to see how far they can push it. That's just been my experience. They're going to test you. You tell them this is a boundary, and then they're going to say, really? Is it? I'm putting my finger past your boundary. And so you got to light them up a little bit. I'm going to send a zinger right past their skull that goes, and it just breezes them and leaves their little feel their hairs on fire. At that moment, I have their attention. So the second step, after you've let them know you have a boundary around that, let them know this is serious. You're not playing around. This isn't a joke. This is serious to me. I'm asking you to honor my boundary. At that point, the shadowy figure keeps coming. Guess what you get to do? Shoot him. Yes, you're correct. And if you do shoot them or light them up at that point, it's their problem, not yours. You gave them fair warning that they were entering into a live fire zone. So if they got shot, sorry for your luck, buddy, but I followed protocol and I will not be before a tribunal. Okay? But isn't that hard for us, that first step to communicate? Don't we swallow a lot of stuff and just let it simmer and stuff it and stuff it and stuff it, get a resentment and a resentment, and sometimes even drink and drug over it for years? Before we say something, then they push one button too far and we say things that we regret. And then we have to go back and make amends. And it's awful. You do not want to have to make amends. So let's avoid the amends. Let's let them know first, I'm not playing around. This is serious. And then I'm going to let you know I'm not playing that. All right. So the old saying in the program, which is one of my favorite, is that we teach other people how to treat us. And I cannot say that enough. I'm going to say it again for your benefit. We teach other people how to treat us. And I got to tell you, I've had my own journey with this, because in an alcoholic family, there were no boundaries. I was not valued. What I thought or what I said or what I cared about came second to the alcoholic. The alcoholic was the focus in the room. So I was either laughed at, especially in early recovery when I tried to set boundaries. I had people say, "What's this boundary shit? I don't want to hear this treatment crap." And I was like, "I'm sorry you don't want to hear it, but it's the way I'm going to live my life now so I can stay sober." Because the way I was living before without boundaries was not keeping me sober. So you have to stand up for yourself. You have to make a decision that I'm going to start to change some of these things I don't like. The people around you, there will be a ripple effect. You know, I was taught by one of my spiritual teachers, if you've been spinning a bowl of water like this for many, many years and you just stop, first that water is going to crash everywhere because of the stopping of the motion. And then to get it going back the other way and getting momentum, it's going to take some effort. And that's exactly what the boundary process is about. But if you're committed, I promise you I'm going to walk you through how to do this today. But again, we teach other people how to treat us. There are no victims. And so many people come to my group, they want to play this victim. They're doing this to me. No, you're putting up with it. Let's be clear about this. You have decided and taught them that you will accept that treatment, even if it's abuse. I'm not blaming the victim when it comes to abuse. But I am saying this lack of tools, you understand me, is deadly. It can hurt you. So we need a new approach. All of our family system issues play out in our adult relationships. Whoever you draw to yourself as a partner is going to be mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, what you were role modeled in front of you while you were growing up. And whether it was healthy or unhealthy doesn't matter. You will gravitate towards that because it's familiar. Human beings, the human brain likes homeostasis. It likes what's familiar. And so you will gravitate to the very thing you hate. Many of my patients will say, "I hate being in chaotic relationships. I hate all the drama." And then they get out of one relationship and they get right back into another one with the same exact dynamic. And they don't realize that's their patterns from childhood repeating, because the childhood saying, "Well, it's familiar, so it must be good. It's familiar, so it's safe," or "It's familiar, I'm used to it." Even if it's terrible, being used to it, right? So we gravitate to what is normal or what was normalized around us when we were growing up. So let me give you an extreme example of the codependent. We talked a little bit about that. We'll go in depth on a later episode. But I had this great story. This is the best story I've ever heard about codependency. I was in St. Louis. My sponsor, Dr. Burns Brady, was the keynote speaker on Saturday night. So I got to be a chaperone and be treated like VIP. It was a big convention, too. There were thousands of people there. And they had an Al-Anon speaker on Saturday night, which is a tradition. They have a convention over a weekend, Friday to Sunday morning. And then usually they'll have an Al-Anon speaker in the afternoon on Sundays. And there was a man speaking, and I had never heard a male speaking for Al-Anon before. So I was like, I got to go to this just to get a different perspective. I've heard a lot of ladies talk about codependency, but not a male. Even though it's an equal opportunity illness, it affects both males and females. And by the way, if you're an addict alcoholic listening to this, you have codependency of some degree. Every one of my patients, every addict or alcoholic I've ever met has codependency. It's just a question of how extreme it's playing out in your life. So I went to this talk, and the guy's saying, I met this woman in the program. We were great. We got married. We went to Vegas for our honeymoon. Everything was just beautiful. It was great. She's working her program. I'm working my program. I thought I had hit the jackpot. I literally, beyond Vegas, for the rest of my life, I wanted to be with this woman. And Sunday morning comes. We're back home. I'm sleeping in bed, and I hear her down the kitchen. I'm hearing pots and pans and clanging going on. I don't know what she's doing, but I'm sleeping. And I get up eventually, and I go down there. And as soon as I get to the bottom step, she shoves this dish at me with a big smile on her face and says, "Look, honey, look what I made for you, just for you. Isn't it great?" And he's looking at it like, "What's in it?" And he looks closer, and he goes, "Oh, crap, eggs. I can't eat eggs. Eggs give me the runs, man. If I eat that, I'm going to have the runs for the next 3 days. I can't do that." But she's sitting there and she's smiling. And then she goes on to say, "This is a dish my mother made for her husband, and my grandmother made it for her husband, and my great-grandmother made it for her. And now I make it for you because I love you so much." Guess what that codependent did? Did he tell her his truth? Absolutely not. Despite having a program, despite being several years in recovery. Working a good program. He just could not bring himself to tell her. And you want to know why? You probably have already figured it out. It's the biggest lie we tell ourselves when it comes to speaking our truth. I don't want to hurt their feelings, right? What a bunch of bullshit. How is having a partnership with someone you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you're going to start out lying to them, how is being dishonest not going to hurt them? Especially if later they found out otherwise, which happens. Stay tuned. But he thought he was in the clear. That's the big problem with codependency. You think you put a Band-Aid on a hole in the dike, but it ain't over yet, bro. Next weekend, she's down in the kitchen. He comes down. Hey, honey, I know you liked it so much last week. I made it again for you. I am not lying to you. I'm telling you the absolute truth. This man told me in the crowd. He said, I did this for 2 years. Now, I know. I will tell this story in group, and my patients will be like, well, he's crazy, man. I say, yeah, and how long did you drink when you knew it was killing you? Oh, well, we're not talking about that. That was 20 years. We're talking about 2 years for this guy. Codependents are powerless over their codependency, the same way that we're powerless over our alcohol and drugs. So, poor man. He let it go too far, and the day came when he went 0 to 100, and he lost his shit on his wife. And he took the dish, and he slammed it on the floor, and he starts screaming at her like he's psychotic, bulging veins and red-faced and sweating and spewing out spit and saying, I can't stand this. I can't believe you made me eating this. And she's just astonished. She's like, what happened? Where's my husband? I don't understand. And after he got through spewing, she looked at him and she said, but I thought you liked it. That's the lie. Because you were afraid to hurt her feelings, you told her a lie that you liked it. Now she thinks you like it, but she doesn't know the real you. That's effed up. Then she said the most magical phrase of all. I don't like making it for you. The only reason I was getting up early on Sundays is because you like it. I'd rather sleep in. So now we have two partners doing this dance of a lie because I'm afraid to speak how I feel. And besides, what is a relationship, especially an intimate relationship, if you're not sharing your heart with your partner? It's a bunch of BS is what it is. We're playing a game, conning each other. Well, I don't want to say she looks fat because I don't want to. Well, maybe don't go there. But I'm just saying you've got to be honest about your feelings and about how you react to things. Otherwise, a lie begets a lie begets a lie, and you're suddenly in the deep middle of it and you lose your shit on your wife, right? So, let's talk about how we actually set these boundaries and what might have kept this man out of trouble. When you're starting out with setting boundaries, like I said, you got to plug in for the long haul. I always encourage my patients, let's pick one thing that is at the top of your list about what your partner is doing or about a situation in your life that you feel like you want to put your dog in that fight. There's an old saying in recovery, don't put your dog in every fight, but we're going to choose one thing. We're not going to try and fix everything about him, nor is that what setting boundaries is about. But we're going to pick one thing that we're going to focus on and try to work on is setting a boundary with. And then I tell them, when you get ready to set that boundary, think about it like you're training a 5-year-old on a new behavior or a dog on a new work schedule. If you have a dog at home and they're used to going outside to do their business at a certain time and suddenly your work schedule changes and you're not able to be there, that dog is going to be at that door like this. Now, I don't know why they don't have a wristwatch. They're not watching TV, see the news come on at 11 o'clock, but they just know it's time to go out. And so you're trying to tell them, but I have this job and I can't be home. Prepare to come home and find a mess on your floor. You're going to have to train that dog the same way you have to train these people because you have taught them that you're like this and it won't compute that now you're not. You want an example of that? All my patients have to commute right off the bat that I don't want to go to that restaurant that I love so much because there's a bar there and I always used to drink there. And their spouse will actually fight them. Alcoholism is a family disease. Their spouse will be, what do you mean? It's your favorite place. You love to go there. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, when I was drinking. But now that I'm not, I don't want to go there. And again, it causes friction. I'm just having to set a new boundary. This is unfamiliar to them. They don't know how to handle new information. So we're going to teach them. And repetition and consistency are your two favorite friends. Repetition, consistency, and keep it simple. Keep it simple. Stop complicating about why you want to do it or why this or that. Give them short, simple answers and concentrate on what you want from them. So I'm going to walk you through the process. I promise we'll do this here. Most of all, we want them to let them know there's a new sheriff in town and the old shit does not fly anymore. We're doing it a new way. especially if you're in recovery. And by the way, if you're in recovery, pick a thing that is around recovery. Those are much easier to defend. Like if you say, I have to go to this meeting on Tuesday nights, then it's hard for them to argue because they want you to get sober. Now, let me explain how this works. Every human relationship you will have in this lifetime is a negotiation. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're doing, whether it's work, whether it's sex, whether it's friendship. You guys are going to do a dance. Every contract and relationship is a dance where I kind of know you're going to do that, and then you're going to do this move, and I'm going to do that move, and we're going to help complement each other. How far am I willing to bend for you, and how far are you willing to bend for me in that little dance we're going to do? I tell my patients that they have a negotiation with me before they ever come to my group, and they're like, "What are you talking about? I never met you before." I'm like, "Yeah, you did. You were over an assessment. You agreed to pay my bill, to pay my paycheck, and then I agreed to be here and teach you today." That's a negotiation. Everything in life is based on you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's how it works. By the way, this is why Washington fails right now. We have lost the art of politics, which the art of politics is literally I do something for you and you do something for me. So what you want to do first is you want to pick your item, and then you want to be clear about what do you want? What are you asking them to do? So first thing is to go to them, and I say go to them like you're very nice and quiet, and say to your spouse, "Honey, can I talk to you?" And she's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And make sure the kids aren't around. Make sure there's not a bunch of noise and TV and all this stuff. You choose a quiet time where they can focus on what you're saying and not be distracted. And I'll say, "Well, honey, there's this meeting on Tuesday nights, and it's a men's meeting, so I know you like that. And I really want to go there, but I know that's your night with the girls. And you've always gone out with the girls that night, and I don't want to interrupt in that. But I tell you, I really feel drawn to this meeting. If I don't go to this meeting, I might not stay sober. Can we talk about it?" Those are the magic words you're looking to say at a certain point early in the conversation. Can we talk about it? When you do that, you are inviting them into the negotiation. Again, what are we getting in Washington now? My way or the highway. Yeah, and it's not working for any of us, you stupid idiots. Invite them in, talk to them, negotiate, and say, "This is what I need. It'll help my sobriety. I really appreciate it if we could do this. What do you think?" So, what do you think? I'd like to hear from you. And they go, "Well, let me think about it." Now, at any point they say, "Let me think about it," shut the fuck up. You have got to be quiet at that point. I will tell you that 90% of the time you've already got what you wanted. If you've gotten in their head and they're going to go ponder on it, you are very likely to get what you want. Very likely. But most of my patients will screw it up because they start manipulating more and say, "But it's for this and it's really important." No, shut up. They've already accepted it. They're going to go think about it. Then you leave them alone. Let them think about it. If they don't come to you soon enough, it's fair enough to say, "Have you thought about it?" But then when they come back, they're going to want to negotiate. Now she wants something, and she's going to say something like this. "Well, I talked to the girls, and the only night they have available besides Tuesday is Friday. And I know that Friday is your poker night. So here's the deal, honey. Are you willing to give up poker night to go to your meeting?" And then I have to negotiate and think about it. You see how this works? What we want at the end of any relationship negotiation is for both parties to come out happy and satisfied. The one thing you don't want is your partner to be gnashing their teeth because they feel like you got one over on them, and then you're going to pay for that later. In some way, shape, or form, they're going to make you pay for that later. So let them speak, listen to them. You can say terms like, I understand what you're saying, I hear you, so that they know you're receiving what they're giving to you, okay? Then after you negotiate and you get what you want, let it go. It doesn't have to be brought up again. You don't have to remind them. You don't have to rub their face in it. If you got what you want, just run with it, all right? But it's let me think about it. Those are the magic words you're looking for. Let me give you a perfect example of this that happened to one of my patients, and we'll start putting some bullet points on the end of this here. I had a woman in my group one time, and she was looking very distressed as we were talking about boundaries. It was obvious. We were in person, and everybody was kind of looking over and going, what is she freaking out about? And she's like, you don't understand. I can't do that. And I was like, well, why don't you tell us what's going on? We'll see if we can figure it out. She said, well, I was a drug addict. I was an opiate head, and I lost everything, so I had to move in with my mom. And it's her house. She's lived there for 30 years. And, you know, she's been nice. She let me move in and everything. But she's doing this thing that's just about getting on my nerves to the point where I'm about to use. Literally, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go relapse over this. And we said, what is she doing? Well, she's walking in my room without knocking. She just comes in at any time, whether I'm sleeping or on the phone or undressing. She just comes walking right in. I'm like, ah! And she says, it's with my anxiety, it's causing me a panic attack. I said, well, I think that's a very valid boundary. You need to talk to her about that. No, I can't do that. Why? Well, it was bigger than I don't want to hurt her feelings. It's the old, well, if I say that, she might kick me out of her house. Again, these delusions we tell ourselves that don't have any basis in reality. Why is asking her if she wouldn't mind knocking on the door before coming in going to instantly translate you're out of the house? But this is the lies we tell ourselves, and we stay silent, and then we pay for it. So the whole group had to get on her. She wasn't going to let me help make her do it. So the whole group had to say, we're going to hold you accountable. You have to do this, and this is the way you're going to do it. You're going to go to your mom and go, Mom, can I talk to you? This is what's going on. And when you're telling them what's going on, just stick to the facts. Don't embellish. Don't say you're making me feel that way. Don't do that. Say, when this happens, this is how it feels to me. Or when this happens, this is my experience. Or when this happens, I'm having this reaction. Okay? So that's all. She went and told her, when you walk in the room without that, I'm reacting with panic, and it's freaking me out. It's keeping me from sleeping. It's keeping me from staying sober. You know what her mom said instantly? Oh, honey, I had no idea. This is my house. I just walk around anywhere I want for 30 years. Of course I could knock on the door. Boom. It was over in 1 minute. And literally this woman had struggled for weeks prior to that, and she would have kept struggling to the point where it cost her sobriety, and it was fixed in 1 minute with communication. But then her mom came at her with a negotiation, and she said, now I want something. And the other girl said, what? She said, I want to make sure you rinse and put the dishes in the dishwasher instead of just leaving it in the sink. I can do that. Okay, cool. Both parties are happy, right? You got that? That's what you're looking for. And that's the art of pure politics, when both parties feel like they got something out of a negotiation. All right, so to end on, the most successful people in the world have great boundaries. I teach my patients that if you wanted to go see Elon Musk today, there's no way you're just going to walk in his office and waste his time. He's got barriers and walls and security guards and marksmen up on the roof and kung fu masters and everything else and secretaries and everything else you're going to have to tear through to get at this man and waste his time, because he is doing his life and he's got more important shit than your shit, right? I have heard stories that Oprah Winfrey and possibly even Bill Gates, but I know for sure Oprah does this, will not look at her cell phone for the first hour that she is awake every morning. She knows that the minute she plugs into the matrix, her mind is going to be hijacked into all that stuff that I got to do and my busy schedule today and all my commitments. And so she takes the first hour of her day just for her, because she's worth it. And look what she does with that. Making tons of money, extremely successful. But what is she doing? She's putting her needs as important. Don't discount your needs. Speak on them. Honor them. Try that practice of not looking at your cell phone right away. I don't. I do not look at the cell phone when I first wake up. Fuck that. I ain't touching it. I need to relax and not start my day with anxiety and the things I got to do. And oh my God, I'm already behind. And I got enough of that generated in my own alcoholic mind. One last thing. I got to tell you, man, I mean, having boundaries in my life is one of the greatest gifts I've gotten out of recovery. And you will get those too, just from learning from your sponsor, making mistakes, having successes. But I'm in a position in my life right now, and I never thought I'd be here. Like I said, remember where I started. I was in an alcoholic family system. There were no boundaries. I did not value myself. I did not know how to speak my truth, and I was not in touch with my feelings. And now I dare ask anybody in my support group and ask, does Christopher have good boundaries? And they probably say, yeah, he's got great boundaries. I have such good boundaries that my reputation precedes me these days. Let me give you an example. I say to my patients, do y'all think it would be okay? I would be okay with it if y'all just brought out a crack pipe during group and smoked during group. You think I would be okay with that? They're like, what are you talking about? Of course not, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, the point is, though, did I mention that to you? Did I specifically tell you I'm not okay with you bringing out a crack pipe? Or was my demeanor such that you just knew Christopher wasn't going to be good with that? You see my point? I made no effort. I put forth no energy, but I just was living that way. And they already knew from who I was, don't fuck with this guy. I used to get patients, and not mostly patients, but other people in the program, call me and waste my time for 2 hours on the phone with their yak, 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 put out my tail feathers and let me leave you feeling crazy. And I coach a lot of my sponsees who get into that position. Man, my sponsee called me and dumped all their shit on me and didn't even ask me how I felt. I told him I wouldn't tolerate that. I interrupt my sponsees when I first get them and say, oh, I'm doing fine today. Thank you for asking. And they all go, what? But the point is, if one of my peoples that I barely know is thinking, well, I'll call Chris and dump my stuff on him and he'll let me do that, their first thought's going to be like, that's not going to work. He'll confront me in the first 5 minutes about get to the freaking point and why am I wasting his time? Again, I'm not a hard ass. You don't have to be a hard ass to do this. But I am firm about what's important to me. You do not interfere with my writing. You do not interfere with my group. Even the nurses coming in and they have valid reasons. They got to get a patient for a reason. I can't stand that. I try to honor that for my group. And if I will give you one more tool, guys, I hope y'all will think about taking a day out of the week. Sunday is my one day of the week where I don't do anything. I take the Bible at its word. I'm not a Bible guy, but it says the seventh day he rested. I don't let life get busy on the seventh day. I do things that are fun. I relax, watch football, play video games. But I'm not freaking myself out. And then guess what happens? By Monday when I go to work, I feel like I wasn't gypped, that my weekend was over too quick and I didn't have any relaxed time. So you can ask Dan when he starts talking here. He knows my Sundays are sacred. Most of my friends know that. It's not that they can't call me. It's not if there's an emergency, certainly call me. I can be flexible. But I'm going to take my time for me. And if you're a counselor, you got to do that. Otherwise, you're burned out. You won't be able to be in this field for long. So consider that as another boundary you can set for yourself, taking one day out of the week just for you to recharge. If you don't have anything in the tank, you got nothing to give back to anybody else. All right, I hope that was helpful. It's a deep topic. We can keep talking about it. If you have questions about it or situations, bring them in. We'll talk about them, and we'll give you more tools as we go along. So what do you think, Dan? What do you think about how hard it is to communicate and speak your truth and set some boundaries and have healthy relationships? And I didn't know anything about that before I came into sobriety, that's for sure.
And still working on it, but have come a long ways, and blind to it in the beginning too. I think that's another one that you say everybody. You said all alcoholics and addicts, but most everybody has some level of codependency. That just seems to be that. Again, that seems to be my experience, my observation, and I'll accept a lot of things you'll say about me, but that was one that I had a hard time swallowing. One thing was I totally misunderstood what it meant. But lack of boundaries is every newcomer's biggest hurdle in the beginning. It's the stuff like the friends who want to go out, and now I got to tell them, no, I'm not doing that kind of thing anymore. Setting boundaries around their relationships, setting boundaries around their work. That's another one that that I fell into. That anything my employer asked me to do, I thought I had to say yeah, and you do at some level in a way, but
Right.
But then again, no, you don't. And I didn't know. Boundary got set for me in early recovery around my work, and I was doing, before that I was working 60 hours a week, and that was camouflage so that nobody would see I had a problem because I was busting it at work. And then I got that home incarceration sentence, and I could only, they would only let me work 40 hours a week. And that was it. I didn't quite understand it, and I didn't question it, but I went in and didn't give any excuses, but told my boss that, for the foreseeable future here, I can only work 40 hours a week. And he said, okay.
They bought it.
And
all those years you were doing 60.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was thinking, how am I going to convince this guy without telling him? Because my work didn't know that I was in the trouble I was in, and I was wanting to keep it that way if that was possible. I walk in there to say that, and I got an ankle bracelet on that. But it was that simple, and other people would say, and I hear people now, I have to work Saturday night. I have to work, and like, do you really? Just because they've asked you to work, and if you've got something going on, you can set that boundary and tell them, hey, I've got my son's football game is that time, and I need to be there. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, we're afraid to even set the boundary, right? We're even afraid to lay it on the table because of all these lies that are swirling around in our head about why this person is not going to accept my request.
It's that sense of being obligated. I was taught in my family, you don't speak back to the boss, and you'll lose your job. You just do what they tell you to do, and you're obligated to do that. or with family, especially. If you get a request, you're obligated to drop everything and run over there. Nowadays, guys, it's so great to pause when agitated. You're going to hear us talk about that tool a lot in here, but just like take a breath, slow yourself down before you say yes or no. Really ask yourself, do I want to do this? Am I comfortable with doing it? And sometimes you decide, yeah, I'll make that sacrifice. Like Catherine's birthday is coming up on Sunday. I love having the chance to come give her 4-year anniversary. That's not a sacrifice on Sunday for me.
Definitely, I'm still learning. It's boundaries around stuff. Even today, this very day, and around my new job, I have this thing of this feeling of obligation. Just like you said, that when somebody calls me and wants me to do some work, that I have a hard time telling them no. I really do. And somebody called this morning, and wanted to know if I could come put a couple cabinets in for them today. And I'm sitting there, I'm out in the shop working. I been working out in the shop all week. And I sit there and I thought about it for a minute. She goes, "Are you still here?" And I sit there thinking, and I said,
man.
Ma'am, I can't do it today. I wish I could help, but I can't. And it was a little abrupt. Okay, thank you. But, but I feel better about myself at that point because I took up for me, right? Otherwise, I knew exactly what would happen.
Yes.
Probably at that time this morning, I could have raced over to her house and got busy doing that, and then knew we were taping today and have to be coming back, make sure I'm getting back on time and all that, and I'd have been stepping on my own toes
doing that. How many other people in your field or in the world in general would say the argument of, well, what are you doing? You're turning down money, dude.
Yep.
You don't
customer's always right.
You don't know when you're going to get a good job again. You need that money. We do sacrifice a lot for money in our culture, and that's another thing that recovery can free you on. We don't realize how much money is our God in America.
Yeah.
And it really controls so much of what you do and what you'll put up with.
Yeah.
But not in recovery, it don't.
No, it doesn't. It does not, and that point about that, like, lack of self-esteem is one of the things that everybody deals with coming in here too. Whether if you how outwardly you show that might be one thing, but and when you start taking up for yourself and setting boundaries and stuff, it will, you start feeling better about yourself, and it's really the flip side of it is that, well, unknowingly you've been not having any boundaries, you've had a lack of boundaries, and you've let people just run your deal. And so then, you go home and you think, God damn it, I didn't want to do that today. I did it anyway though, right? And I don't, all these things you're saying yes to that you don't want to do. And you start, taking up for yourself and speaking your truth, and you feel better about yourself.
And how beautiful, and I've watched your journey with this, and you've seen me even develop with this since you've known me, of even getting to knowing what you do and don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's the thing about recovery. We're coming in here playing so many roles and being the actor, like the big book talks about. I don't even know if I want to go to that show or go to this event or go to this restaurant.
Yep.
And you get to question that and ask yourself, have I changed where I don't like that anymore? And you can change.
Yep.
You have that right now.
Yep, no doubt. But just like the rest of this stuff, it's a lifelong journey.
Right, but you got to first step up for yourself.
You
got
to
to decide, I'm going to follow this program and learn new tools to honor my truth and to honor my life. The last thing you want to do, folks, is get to your deathbed and find out that you gave away everything for everybody your whole life and you missed your life, your dreams, your hopes, whatever you want to achieve here.
Yep, you do see,
and by the way, how come it is okay for a guy like Elon Musk? Oh, it's okay for them because they're millionaires. They weren't millionaires to start, buddy. They got there because they honored their truth of what they wanted from this life.
Yeah, and that phone's probably one of my worst ones. Is attached to it. I just talked to a guy today, and I even keep it on silent, and I do that. But one thing about like working in the shop is that I'll stay away from it. It just sits over there because I'm listening to a book or something, and I've got it on Do Not Disturb, so it's not doing any ringing or buzzing or calling for me. And I've been using that Do Not Disturb button on my phone more and more and more. I don't have to turn it off, but I get to look. Then I look at it when I want to look at it, rather than when it's whistling for me, because it does feel a little bit of a Pavlov's dog kind of thing, where I've let this thing train me that all it has to do is whistle and it gets my attention.
And people don't believe that they're vulnerable to that. But literally, if there's a Labrador in the corner right now sleeping, I go, and they'd be like,
Yep.
That's what your notifications are doing to you, folks. Don't kid yourself.
Yep. People with their.
I love my baby and I just want time with what? My phone? What?
Yeah.
I mean, in my family, there was some crazy idea like, it's not spiritual or holy or like maybe this guilt complex the freaking Irish have that we don't deserve anything, live through the potato famine and all the oppression we've been through as a population. But this idea that not asking for what you want in life, like that's not important. I watched all my relatives do that, and I refuse to live that way anymore, and especially in any relationships. I am not going to play roles. You're going to either get me and you want to be with me, or you want to be with some other dude because he's going to play a role with you. So do that for yourself, folks. I promise you won't regret it. All righty, let's transfer into the question period. We have four great questions today, actually. And thank you for bringing them in, people, and keep them coming. Again, if we don't address it now, it will be on a future podcast. There was one in here particularly that's really tailored for the next topic we're going to do next week. Next week, which will be episode 8, will be on trauma. So I kind of wanted to save the question as a backup to that topic. All right, first question of the day. If someone is new to recovery and really ready to get started, what are some of the things they should look out for or seek out to at least have a fighting chance? Great question. As a sponsor and as a counselor, I'm looking for the people who are ready. I am studying them from the moment they enter my room and the moment they start talking about their story, and I'm looking for one thing. I'm looking for fear and desperation. I know that's two things, but they're very closely related. And we have a good friend of ours named Scott Lee that says, if my new guy doesn't have it, I want to give him 100 cc's of desperation right in the ass just to get his attention. But when my guy's hurting, something is really at stake. He's going to lose his kids, or he's just tired of living the way he's living. But it has to be more than words. I just see that. I'll see that spark of willingness. So that's the first piece of this I just wanted to address, being ready. It's a mystical, mysterious process, but when somebody's there, you'll just know it. They're like, as a sponsor, they're almost begging you for the next step. Like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Sometimes you have to pace them. But still, I don't hold out those horses back too much. If a guy's ready to move, I'll move him quickly through the readings and get him through to this fourth step without shortcutting steps 1, 2, and 3. But what are the things they should look out for and seek out? Well, you got to look out for your old people, old places. That's our number one point of triggers. Too many of my patients will go to the barbershop, and eventually they say, if you keep going to the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut. It's not the barbershop, folks. It's the bar, or it's the dope man's house. And they'll sit there and they'll watch other people use, thinking that is not affecting them. And then they'll come into group and coach me how it didn't bother them at all. And then next weekend, they're drunk as a skunk and they don't make it back to group. They don't realize you're waving a raw steak in front of that tiger that's barely behind bars. You are agitating the beast, and you are not strong enough for that thing not to come out and get you. So when you say what to look out for, old people, old places, these people will talk you into a drink. Well, you can have a beer. Surely you can smoke a joint. What the hell? It's like, no, I can't. Not that I can't. I'm choosing not to. I have an illness. I'm different than you. Maybe that works for you, bro, but some of us can actually say, I'm looking at your life. It's not really working for you, but I'll give you that. Maybe it works for you. I'm different. It's like sugar to a diabetic. I just can't afford to take that chance. But what should they seek out? Comrades. Comrades, comrades, comrades. Today in our group, one of our fellows brought up a topic about how there's a liquor store on every corner. We are in the bourbon state of the United States, Kentucky. We are known as the bourbon state. I was raised steeped in alcohol in this place we live. It's a beautiful place, but again, that's our heritage. That's our money maker, one of them. And so, he was talking about the liquor store in every corner, and it's really bugging him because everywhere he looks, it's there, and it's there, and it's there. And I said, well, here's what's really interesting. How many years did you go before that? Maybe 20, especially when you were drinking, and you didn't notice that was weird. In fact, you thought that was a good idea, that there was a liquor store close enough to you that you could walk to while you were drunk. So that's called awakening. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing in this process of recovery, is awakening from this matrix that we think is normal. And it's not by any means normal to have a liquor store on every corner. What are we teaching our kids? That we sell poison on every freaking corner, or that you go to the restaurant and the waiter's going to ask you if you want some poison with your dinner. So what do they need to seek out? Comrades in arms. They need the fellowship. They need buds to pal around with, to navigate this landscape. You are not healthy enough to be able to walk through all those challenges on your own. You've already proven that you're going to fall. But here's where the ego gets involved. I tell them, get numbers, get people. Oh, I don't want to bother them. If I could please address this, as there are any newcomers out there, when you're saying I don't want to bother them, you're actually being selfish. Yes, you are. Let me explain that. You are determining for me that you're not going to make my day by letting me be of use. You're determining that you're not going to let me feel that God juice that I feel when I get a chance to help anybody. You're determining that that won't help cheer up my day to hear from you and have a chance to be of service to you. And you're determining that you know what's best for you, which is the wrong way to be in the program, period. So reach out. Ask people, would you be willing to go to this thing with me? Would you be willing to go over here and do this thing with me? We have a question coming up in a little bit here that's going to address more of that. But I don't know how you do it without surrounding yourself with that army around you. You just can't. We've already proven we can't do it alone. So seek out your group, seek out your peeps. I always make it easier for my people. Find one cool person. At my home group, I was playing the piano one night. I took on the coffee position, not because I asked for it, but they made me the coffee guy, which was good. It helped me be focused and get there on time. But I had to get there early, which provided me the opportunity to play the piano in the church. And I didn't have a church in a piano in my halfway house. And I was playing it one night. My best friend for my sobriety walked up to me and said, I like that. What's that? And he was a drummer, and he had been in some serious bands. And next thing I know, we had a friendship because I met one cool person at the meeting, somebody that had some of my similar interests. Then you begin building your army from there. Sometimes you have to go through a bunch of jerks, but there are a lot of cool people in the program. You got to find the ones that work for you. So to have a fighting chance, I beg them to go to meetings. They won't go. I beg them to even go to a Zoom meeting while they're doing the dishes. They don't even have to do anything. Just listen. They won't go. It's crazy. But that's it. I believe that's the number one thing you can do. You can try Suboxone. You can try Vivitrol, all the drugs they offer us for cravings. No. You have to avoid the cravings, stay out of slippery situations, and you need to surround yourself with an army. And if you do that, you'll be just fine. We've seen many people walk through that fire. All right, second reading. And I'll ask Dan about his opinion on some of these if he has any when we get through all these. My spouse passed away, and it's very hard in general, but even harder to think about moving on and eventually taking off my rings. Wow, that's real hard. I'm sorry you're going through that. Whew, I can feel that. When I think about it, I feel like I'm cheating on my spouse. Everyone grieves in their own way, but what advice can you give me for being okay with it? I don't have anyone in mind at this time, and I'm not really looking for it, but I also want to be open to the idea. It's almost a whole year, and I miss companionship and conversation. It says, thank you, torn by grief. Wow, it really brings tears to my eyes, actually. In my group every day, man, I'm finding this out. Death is one of our biggest foes for triggers. The only thing I've been able to figure about it is it's the ultimate I don't have control. I don't have control of the stock market. I don't have control of the government, but really death is the one thing that can sweep in at any time, like a tsunami or a nature event, and just wreck your whole world. So first off, I'm sorry you're going through that. I had a spiritual teacher who used to address this a lot. Her name was Marion, and she was this beautiful 4'8", 65-year-old woman with red hair out of a bottle, and she was crazy and hilarious and just brilliant. She's my greatest spiritual teacher of my lifetime. And she talked about, well, let's flip the script on that and say if you passed away and your spouse was left, would you want them to pine for you and be lonely and miserable the rest of their lifetime here, or would you want them to have somebody that they could be happy with? Now, isn't it interesting? I could almost feel that immediately. You're thinking, oh, no, I don't want them to be miserable. I want to be happy. Okay. She would also say that when people pass, they get that clarity that we are not allowed as human beings about why things are the way they are. And I'm really holding on to that for when I leave this sphere. I want to know why certain things had to be the way they are. I kind of already know from sobriety, but they just see it differently. You know, we're in this little bubble where we're not allowed to see. Even the quantum physicists will tell you there's curtains of reality right next to you, but we can't see them. We're not allowed to. But when you die, you get that bigger perspective of, okay, well, this is why this fits and why this is happening. And since they have that bigger perspective, it's not personal anymore. Like sometimes with somebody with a spouse, it can feel like a betrayal. You're being unfaithful, right, to get somebody else or to be happy with somebody else, or you're dishonoring their legacy or their memory. It's the furthest thing from that. we do not get to choose who leaves us at what time, but we do get to choose our reaction to it. And I say if you've sufficiently grieved to the point where you feel it's sufficient, no one else can determine that for you. And you know already it's cyclical. You can go through it, think you're out of it, and also we go back through some more, just from a memory or a smell or something like that. I would really encourage you strongly to be open to finding happiness again in this lifetime. You probably have many years left ahead of you, I'm going to assume. And I don't think that's normal. I think it's pathological to mourn somebody the rest of your life by being in mourning the rest of your life. I don't think that's healthy at all. Also, be talking to a therapist, which I'm sure you are. And if it's a grief therapist, they will back me up on this. And I've also heard from a lot of couples when I was doing therapy individually who were talking about, they could feel the presence was like smiling on them when they got married to someone else, or they were there somehow. Again, if this person really loved you and you really loved them, that transcends everything. And from the other side, they love you even more, and they just want you to be happy. So don't deny yourself that. You've sufficiently grieved if you feel that way, but I can see it's been a year. And if it happens and you run into somebody, you deserve that. You deserve to have a companion. But overall, I'm just sorry for that. It's one of our biggest enemies in life, this mortality we all deal with. But that's my suggestion from my experience, is that you're not meant to suffer and be miserable the rest of your life. It is just life. Some things just happen. Tragedies, calamities, natural disasters. We don't ask for them. They just happen. How I react to them is going to determine my fate. So I think you deserve to be happy. So I hope that helps, and I'm sorry for your loss. All right, 2 more questions to go this week. Dear, I am one too. Hello. With the summer holidays coming up and with less than a year, I am struggling about how to, quote unquote, go to the lake. For those of you that don't understand the South, and Kentucky is kind of south-north, we're almost kind of Midwest here in Louisville, but the rest of the state's pretty southern. But going to the lake is a tradition. It's what we do on the weekends. We go and we fish and we party and we have big bonfires and people get burned and drunk and get in fights and the cops come, and that's what we do in the South, just to explain it to you. So, how to go to the lake with my immediate family and friends who I have things in common with. They are not alcoholics, but the alcohol flows freely, especially the later the day gets. Yes, sir. Or ma'am. I understand. I feel bad not attending, especially with kids. And if I do go, I really have no business staying around the campfire. I told y'all, that's where all the danger stuff happens. That's when the trouble begins. Somebody wants to play with fire. It sucks going to bed early. Yes, it does. Nobody said you had to do that because you're sober. As the rest of the family are laughing and having a great time. So any ideas would help, please. So let's address the elephant in the room first, then I'm going to encourage you with some more positive stuff. The elephant in the room is we live in a sick society that accepts bizarre things as normal. And when you're first fighting for your sobriety in your first couple of years, you're going to have to go against the grain of that and make some very difficult decisions about what best supports your recovery. And sometimes the people around you will not understand why you need to make that decision. Even when I was in early recovery, I'd be at meetings and I'd hear stories about saying, well, I just couldn't go home for Christmas this year and be around my family. I knew that would trigger me too much and I'd lose my sobriety. And whether they understand it or not, I'm just trying to fight to save my life. I have walked through that challenge. I had a lot of shit thrown at me about not going home and not being home and staying up in Minnesota when I was trying to get sober. But I had to do what I had to do to save my life. And that's the bottom line. These people do not have what's at stake that we have at stake. So that's the first thing I want to be clear to you about. When you're making this decision, is it worth going to prison, being in another institution, losing your kids, losing your home, losing your job, being destitute, being out in the streets, living in tent city? Is it worth being around the fire for all that? Obviously, I would guess you would be saying, no, of course that's not worth that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is no requirement to be miserable in recovery. And I can't stand anybody that assumes being sober means you suck and aren't having any fun, because it's the exact opposite. Dan will back me up when he talks. We have more fun than you ever had in your life sober. You do not realize the chains that alcohol is putting on you to act like that alcohol thinks you should have fun. Alcohol, the chemical, is in control of your fun. It's a chemical fun. It's not real. It's not soul felt. It's not that laughter you had as a kid where you laughed so hard the milk came out of your nose and your stomach hurt so bad. Like we do when we go on retreat and those guys are up at night laughing and laughing and Dan comes up and says, enough. It's an inside joke. But literally, fun is waiting for you and you need to show these people how we do it. So my first thought was you need to bring a couple of your comrades to the lake. Invite a couple of people in recovery that you can go and y'all can have your own little fire and do a little retreat and maybe some check-in. And don't be surprised if one or two people don't gravitate over. A very good friend of mine in town is on a committee, and several of my friends have served on this committee. They're in charge of the sober tent for the Grateful Dead and for Fish and all these other touring bands during the summer. And they get paid to go and run these sober tents for the kids that may overdose or freak out. And while they're having a meeting or doing the Serenity Prayer, these kids will walk up and say, hey, man, this is cool. What's going on? Can I be part of this? And they're like, yeah, come on in, man. Sure, you can join us. They see something about the fun that they're having that's different about the chemical fun that they're having. They see it, and they want it, but they don't know what it is. So I'm going to throw a phrase at you that's become one of my favorite phrases straight out of California. It's called be sober out loud or recover out loud. Do not be ashamed of what you are. Do not let anybody cast shade that you're trying to be a better man and improve your life and go somewhere with your life rather than giving Anheuser-Busch your retirement account. That's on them. If that's the life they want, that's fine. I don't judge them. But I don't let anybody get in the way of judging me and telling me I'm not living my best life because that's what we're doing. So I'm going to be sober out loud. I'm going to let you know how freaking good it is. I'm going to be laughing louder than they are. If I have friends with me over here and we're doing our thing and drinking ginger ales, we're going to be laughing and having more fun than they are. So that's what my challenge to you. Do not hide in your trailer. Do not go to bed early. Show them how we have fun in recovery. In the retreat, these guys don't go to bed till 4 a.m. And if those people are drunk around the fire, they'll be passed out by then. So you outlasted them by having fun. Take your own fun. Figure it out. Find the things that you can shove it in their face almost about. It's great to be sober. Hope that helps. You can tell I'm kind of passionate about that. But I've never had more fun in my whole life. And one last thing I'll say. When I was using, I don't care where I was and how much fun I thought I was having. I always, and I mean always, even when I was not holding something, had a paranoia like, okay, you're having fun, but don't have too much fun. People are starting to look at you. Maybe there's a cop around here. Be cool. Be cool, man. Be cool, man. You're getting, maintain, dude. That's not fun. When I'm in sobriety, I act like a fool. I had one of my friends. He used to take people from the Human Place to our meeting and back. And on his way back, he would purposefully go down the street that went past 4th Street Live. 4th Street Live is blocks in Louisville downtown of bars and drunk people. And he would get to the stoplight and purposely make it stop at the stoplight, turn his music up past its top volume, and he had killer speakers in his car. And he would make the guys from the Human Place get out of the car with him and either do a Chinese fire drill or dance in the fucking street. And as they're doing that, there's cops over here looking at him. And invariably, one's going to go, what's going on over here? You guys are having way too much fun, blah, blah, blah. And he comes over and he leans into the car and says, what are y'all doing? And he puts his big book up, or he gives him his coin, says, we just came from a meeting. We're just celebrating the juice. And the cop's like, all right, get out of here. Don't let anybody kill your joy or kill your juice. Don't let anybody dull your fucking shine. Be sober out loud. And find people to teach you how to do that. All right, last question. Here we go. It's always going to come up. This is going to be the eternal question because of what's going on in our country for a while now. But here it is. I don't agree. So they've made it clear. They're not on board with this. They're just saying, I don't agree, but I've heard other people say this. So I wanted your feedback. Why is pot often an alcoholic's list? It's so-called not addictive, and now it is legal. It's not legal in every state, not yet. Seems to help settle nerves and level some people's anxiety. I have heard other people say it helped them to stop drinking due to its settling nature. I'll bet it did. All right, so there is another California term that we derisively joke about here in Kentucky. It's called California sober. If you say that with anywhere where they're hip to it, they'll say, oh, I know what that is. California sober means that you're smoking pot as your way of getting sober. And that is not being sober. If sober means nothing, then nobody would want it. We honor sobriety in our group. That's the most sacred possession we have. And I tell my patients, I'm sober 40 freaking years. That means nothing. Okay? I have not used any chemicals in that time. I haven't switched. And that's what that is. When you go to another chemical, you're just switching. You are using an artificial means to get an artificial response in your brain, which gives you an artificial emotion to make yourself feel better than your natural emotion because you felt down. So yeah, it's been selling my anxiety. But what if your anxiety is trying to tell you something that you need to change something in your life? So now you're going to medicate that and not make that change and just be dissatisfied the rest of your life? People don't understand that in our culture because they tell us we need a pill for everything. But anxiety and depression are there to teach you and get your attention, to tell you you need to change something. Your depression about your job is important. It's telling you you deserve something better, and maybe you'll go after something better. But not if you go home and get high every night and watch Netflix and eat Cheetos. So that's number one. It's switching. It's not recovery. It's not sobriety. Don't dull the shine of what I have worked so hard to get by telling me you're sober, but you're still drinking on the side or you're still smoking a little bit of this and that. That's some bullshit. Grade A BS. I'm not going to sign off on it. So teach the new kids. I had a good friend of mine who went to AA and he never heard that pot wasn't allowed. And he was getting ready to get his first year chip and we were on retreat. He started crying on Sunday morning because Sunday morning is when the magic happens. And he had to confess to the group that he's been smoking. And he had to reset his sobriety date. He didn't realize that was not right. He's just a dumb kid. I'd say he was from Indiana, but I'm currently in Indiana with Dan. So I don't want to insult Indiana, but I'm just saying, this is a little joke we have in Kentucky between the two states. When I was up in Minnesota, it was between Iowa and Minnesota. But so that's number one. You're either sober or you're not. Number two, there's a lot of misinformation out about the entire industry. You got to realize people are always wanting to make money. That's what every ill in our culture is driven by profit. So they're going to open the floodgates on this, and all these mom and pops and people think that they're going to be entrepreneurs and make all this money. Well, R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris, I had heard experts say, they have these machines. They know how to roll things. As soon as it's legal federally, they're going to go into business and put everybody out because they have the marketing routes, they have the advertising budget, they have all the know-how to package and do all that. And so they're just waiting to make money. There was a Speaker of the House. I won't mention the name, but he was the most conservative Republican I've ever met. And the day that he transferred and went to work for a marijuana advocacy company, I was like, holy crap, the tide has turned. I knew at that moment we were heading in that direction. So federal approval is coming. It's coming. It's going to be a part of our lives. What we have to ask ourselves, this is what I jokingly say, does America need another substance, yet another substance, that's going to make them stupid, fat, lazy, and dumb? All right, stupid, fat, lazy, dumb, and inactive. All right, most Americans don't vote anyway, so now we're going to have more people just smoking pot and saying, whatever, dude, just do whatever you want. That's not a good thing. The people in power want that, by the way. They love when you're inactive. They love when you're not voting. They love when you're not speaking up. Just stay home, drink your beer, smoke your pot. It's okay. So, it is a drug. It's the most powerful drug we have, and wouldn't even know what to make of it if I smoked it today. In my day, we were smoking 2% THC all the way through the 80s and some of the 90s. Suddenly, these people figured out a way to monkey with it, and now it's 30% average on the streets. Not only do you have 30% average marijuana, cannabis, Delta 9, I think it is.
8 and 9.
8 and 9. Well, 8's kind of the legal one now, though. It's tricky how they do it.
Yeah.
It's technically got a little bit of buzz in there, but you can still buy that at the smoke shop. And then now it's maybe laced with fentanyl and other things as well. A lot of my patients are running into that. They'll get knocked on their ass and sent to the hospital and didn't realize there was fentanyl in the joint. So we don't know. I gravitate towards the trainings on marijuana. I want you to know that was one of my favorite chemicals. So I want to know, where are we today? Don't think there's not a part of my addict brain that isn't like, I'd like to try that. What's that like? So I'll go learn, and I'll get these top experts in the country, man. These are people who are deciding policy. They have studied the crap out of this. And you know what they say? We don't know anything about the new weed. We knew everything about the old weed. We closed the studies. We closed the books, just like with alcohol. We knew everything. Now we've had to reopen, but to reopen, you got to get government approval to study weed, and it's illegal, so that's really hard. Then you have to get subjects willing to be part of it. Then you have to get funding, and you have to do all the research. Then you have to have it studied and peer reviewed. And it's going to be 15 years till we know. So I jokingly but seriously tell my patients, son, I cannot tell you with factual knowledge that your dick won't fall off in 20 years from smoking the new pot. Now, they're going to sit there and go, oh, that's stupid. Why did it happen? Well, we're seeing a lot of other things happen. Have you all been watching the news? The states where it's legal, people have been having episodes of like severe vomiting where they're driven to the emergency room and they can't keep food down even after they stop smoking. I heard a speaker who was on a podcast, he's pretty well known, talk about he went through that. And he still didn't believe when the physicians were telling him it's this thing with the new marijuana. But he's like, oh, no, that's just some propaganda you're trying to tell me. And he went back to smoking, and it happened again. And he nearly lost the ability to eat. Almost died. His words, not mine. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's all kinds of other things. And we're not even talking about CBD oil. We're going to tell you it does this and this and this. There's no studies to prove that. Nothing. There is nothing. The only thing we think marijuana consistently medically might help with is seizures for certain types in children. Certain types, it's a very small subset of seizures that they have solid evidence it might be helpful. Now, if a cancer patient needs it to be able to eat when they're going through chemo, I don't have any problem with that. But don't call it medical. Just call it assisted, just comfort food, whatever you want to call it. But there's not a medical validation for it yet. We don't have the studies. We knew about the old pot. We don't know about the new pot. So I would caution everybody, alcoholics will always switch one addiction for another. On another episode, we'll talk about how you'll find out that underneath your addiction might be sex addiction, might be food addiction, might be codependency. Everybody gets something. Everybody that figures out they had a chemical dependency when they get sober, they find out, oh, there's something else I need to work on. Then there is no evidence that it settles anxiety. What it's doing, it's treating your symptoms. This is the problem with Xanax and all the other drugs we have for anxiety. They will treat your symptoms, not cure the problem. So it makes you feel like your anxiety's gone away, but it's just cut off the message to your brain. The anxiety is still there. And again, I still tell you, it's your body trying to communicate with you. Listen to me. I've got something to share with you. Don't turn me off. But that's what mood-altering chemicals do. They affect your symptoms, not. So lots of people are going to say, yeah, it made me feel better. It made me deal with my pain and blah, blah, blah. Well, you still had the problem. You just were ignoring it. Which, by the way, you can do with alcohol, too. I know a lot of people that will try to drink a toothache away or a backache away, and it doesn't work. It doesn't make the backache go away. It just medicates the symptoms. So that's why, just to wrap it up, pot is off the alcoholics list. Because if I have one, I'm going to want two, and I'm going to want three. And many of my patients will say, but it's not my favorite. I rarely didn't even like it. Well, I have experience with this. I tried to drink it one time and not use the things I wanted to use, and I got so frustrated while drinking because I didn't like it, and it wasn't hitting the spot, and all it took was some little pretty girl to wave her blinkers at me with a little bag of white stuff, and I went, and I was drunk, and I walked right over there and got some. It's a gateway. It's a lie. And you will end up using something else. If you're an actor and alcoholic, if it's not your favorite, you'll end up going to your favorite. You will. I know people who will swear not against that. And it's been 18 months or so they've been smoking pot. And I said, well, the record's still out, though. Let's wait 24 months. Let's wait 3 years. Let's wait and see 40 years what happens to you. I've seen every single alcoholic fail at that. I've never seen one successful trading a substance for another substance. How about you, Dan? Have you seen anybody successfully do that?
No, I have never seen anybody successfully. So, but it's common as I'll get out and, just use some words out of my favorite book, Cunning, Baffling, and Powerful. Our bodies will, this disease we got will do anything to figure out how to feel different because I'm not, like you said, I'm not okay with feeling the way I feel. So I got to do something, to take something, eat something, smoke something, whatever, to get to screw something to get to feeling better than I'm feeling right now. And like you said, the root of it is to figure out why I'm not feeling okay right now. Just a real quick one is, most of us are eating shitty and not getting any exercise. Start with those two things and see if you might feel a little bit better if you put better fuel in you and you start moving your body around. The only solution we have is 100% abstinence, is what it says. And it also says the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, for those who don't catch the references, that that I can't safely use alcohol in any form at all. And Scott Lee says, that he beats any form, smokable, snortable, injectable, any form. Doesn't matter. Liquid, we can't safely use it. We will revert back to our old stuff. And like you said, it just is getting, I don't know if it's any more popular. As long as I've been around 12-step recovery, people have been trying the marijuana maintenance program. It's even got that term, and everybody, it's a widely used term. And those of us that have been around long enough have seen it fail enough that we know that it's not going to work.
Well, let's say it works, but do they look happy, joyous, and free?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I've never seen them be happy. They're just like there. They're just
And,
high.
I have beloved sponsee who tried that for a while, and I stayed with him through it. And for a while, he was okay. But after a while, it started eating on his conscience enough. And it wasn't so much that it was getting him, it was changing him. And he could see that now, because once you had a taste of some recovery in your life, and then all of a sudden what was happening was that happy, joyous, and free was slipping away from him. And then to circle back to about one of the questions in there of what you can do when you're in new recovery and you find these comrades, you find your tribe, man. You have to. You cannot do it. You can't do it otherwise. Find some people that are doing things that you like to do. And, you said something about inviting them to do stuff with you, or call them up and say, hey, what are you going to do? And can I join you?
Let's go to a different lake.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to this lake.
Yep. Most, like you said, if you're not doing that, you're robbing an opportunity for another guy to participate in his recovery. You're never bothering me. How many times does the phone ring for me just right when I need to? I just come out of some situation, ring, and hey, now I get to talk to a new guy, or talk to anybody really. But there is something special about when the new guy calls you and get to talk to him for a minute, share some experience, strength, and hope, and whatever was hitting me a minute ago. I giggle about it every time because the phone rings just in time. So often it's cool. It really is. What else was we talking? You just have to find some friends. You just have to. You have to go to meetings.
We're lucky in our group.
Where are you going to find these friends?
If you just suit up and show up in our group, we'll find you.
Yeah, we'll drag you in.
We'll reach our hand out and say, come on, we're going.
Come do this.
I said that to a newcomer this last week about, you got to go to the retreat. And he was like,
yep.
Just like a deer in the headlights. I was like, don't worry, man. It's nothing funny. It's nothing weird. We're not going to do things to you in the woods and freak you out. Just come. Just you understand. You'll see.
Yep. And, you talk about that reluctance to go to meetings. And, the fact of the matter is that's the only place you're going to find these new friends.
That's it.
There's nowhere else. I mean,
it's the only place you're going to find the people that relate to you.
Yeah.
The normal people are never going to understand
you.
He could surround that fire and tell them his story, and they'll still say, yeah, but you can have a beer, right?
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
Yeah.
But it's against the grain, and you're fighting uphill when you're in early recovery. Our society is so sick,
hard,
man. For even the idea that pot is safe. How sick an idea is that?
Yep.
First off, one joint, when I was smoking, the low stuff was equal to 4 cigarettes.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say safe, how is 4 cigarettes safe for you?
Yeah.
And you're smoking how many a week?
Yep. One of the crooked thinking that I had, you were talking about going to restaurants that have bars or serve alcohol. And, I used to think that everybody was drinking in the restaurants, and then once I sobered up and started looking around, there was really, again, just 10% or so of people actually in the restaurant were actually having alcoholic beverages, where when I sat there, I thought everybody was. It was in my head that we were all sitting around with a beer or a cocktail on the table.
And that made you cool.
Yeah.
That made you like somehow you're the cool crowd, right?
Yeah.
Especially a joint or something like that. Actually, if you look around, you're going to find it's the healthiest, best looking people that take care of themselves, in the best shape, people that are taking care and they don't want to put those chemicals in their body.
Yep.
And I would ask that person about the fire. Look around the campfire and see what kind of shape your friends are in from putting all that beer in them and stuff.
Yeah.
And as they're stumbling around, and then look at these healthy people over here. Which looks more attractive to you? That's what you have to decide is what you want.
Yep. And not to mention, tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up feeling good.
You'll be out
they're
there
going to be
fishing,
dragging their asses and moaning and sitting around trying to come off of whatever they did to themselves last night, and
I don't know where that idea came from that we're having so much fun using. We're not.
Yeah, it's a sad sack party.
Most times.
Just got camouflage.
at first it was fun because it was new. with that early blush of finding your chemicals is exciting because you get to try all the new things that surround the chemicals. So I get that piece. But once you get into that lather, rinse, repeat phase, you're boring as hell.
Yeah.
You do the same shit every weekend. This guy probably went to the lake every weekend, stood around the fire, did a couple of rebel yells, you know, threw some extra logs on the fire and hit on a couple of girls that probably wasn't his wife. And, you know, that's what we do. That's not fun, man. So.
And I think the person who had their spouse pass, if they just pay attention, they'll know when it's time to change things. And
maybe God will send them someone in their life.
Right? Yep. And that's I'll just speak freely as I usually do. Running around looking married might block that opportunity too, you know, and I'm not saying don't do that. Everybody do it in their own time and whatever, but you know, there could be, just for fun, there could be Mr. Right around someplace and he sees rings on the fingers and he's turned his head and went the other way because
he is Mr. Right. He's not going to violate.
He is right. Not going to violate any boundaries and stuff. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
But I think, as with everything here, man, prayer, meditation, and your buddies, talk to people about it, and you'll get the sign of when.
Pray to your spouse.
Yeah.
Pray to your spouse and say, I don't know what to do. What's the right thing?
Yep.
And see if a sign shows up.
Yep.
I do that all the time. I challenge God. I challenge spirituality. I challenge the universe. I want to see its presence. And I'll be there, all right, give me something. And yesterday I told you it gave me something with those people I saw in my building. Totally changed my mood. Because I knew that was directly from spiritual world. There was no coincidence that I saw that at that moment to change my mood and make me laugh. And I was like, all right, thank you. I needed that little wink that it's going to be okay.
Yep. And you know, you don't see that when you're fuzzed up.
You can't.
You can't see it.
You can't. You can't see beyond your own nose.
Yeah.
I won't say words of who it is, and we'll end on this, but there are certain podcasters who I used to admire and like what they used to do, and now they're smoking pot on the program, and you can put the two together. I defy anybody to put one video side by side with the other and look at their demeanor, look at their face, and look at their actions and see which one looks more appealing. The healthy dude or the guy who's like, yeah, that's so funny, man. That's so baked.
Yep. It turns me off quickly.
Well, it's been a great podcast, everybody. So thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for joining us. We're going to keep it going as long as we can, but we need your help. We won't beat you over the head with this, but please, if you have any way to comment, subscribe, just put a like out there. That helps us with the analytics so that we can get it to more people. It's really hard in the YouTube marketplace to get noticed, and there's people dying out there who need to know about boundaries, need to know about the issues we talked about today. So please help them do that service work to just click like, just subscribe if you can, and maybe leave a comment and say good stuff or whatever's on your heart. But thank you for being with us. We appreciate your support. All right. We like to end every week as we do in the groups and as I do in my group at the treatment center with the Serenity Prayer. So shall we?
I'm ready.
All right. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Recover out loud.